Welcome to the Book Fair, Children's Literature for Grown-Ups. I'm Anthony, and this week it's 107 degrees in the state of Texas. We're looking at the latest news in book bans, as well as the latest releases in children's literature. And lastly, we have an interview with independent children's book author Sophia Brown. First, Greenville County School Library in South Carolina wants to remove trans books from the YA section. The Greenville County Library System, which has 12 locations in and around the Greenville, South Carolina area, is giving serious consideration to removing all books featuring trans characters from their young adult sections. The public library system has been among one of the most prolific in the realm of censorship since the rise of the moral panic over books in 2021. They've attempted to persuade the city council to take over library collection decisions, a resolution that did not pass. But there has been success through utilizing recommendations from the Materials Review Committee to remove LGBTQ+ themed books into new sections of the library, as well as move entire sections of the library in and of itself. Notably, books in the parenting and early childhood collections have been moved from near the juvenile areas to adult nonfiction sections. At least 3 LGBTQ+ themed books were also moved from the sections of the library meeting the needs of their target audience to less accessible spaces. This means that they were taking young adult and children's literature books that happened to feature LGBTQ+ characters and putting them in the parenting section in the nonfiction adult section of the library, typically where the children who are looking for children's literature will not be searching. Next, most Americans oppose school book bans and restrictions. New research supports freedom to read. Last fall, the organizations Every Library and Book Riot conducted a series of studies to assess parental perceptions of libraries and librarians. The results showed that the vast majority of parents trust librarians and do not think that book banning is appropriate. School librarians were deemed as essential staff in a school, and parents felt their students were not only safe in school libraries, but that the professionals were well studied to selecting age and content-appropriate material. School librarians, as well as their peers in public libraries, were ranked among the top 5 most trustworthy professionals. Now, new research from the Knight Foundation, in partnership with Langer Research Association, further supports the fact that most Americans disagree with banning and restricting access to books in school libraries. Conducted in February and March of 2024, the researchers surveyed a nationally respected pool of 4,000 adults. They spanned political affiliations as well, with 33% identifying as Democrat, 27% as Republican, and 38% as independent or something else. Asked either way, 27% identified as liberal, 41% as moderate, and 29% as conservative. I'll include the link to the full breakdown as well as the summary from Book Riot in the podcast description. In short, they have found that a majority of adults oppose the methods to which that schools and libraries are restricting access to books for children. And a majority overwhelmingly trust and support teachers and librarians. And interestingly enough, you can see through the full breakdown that trust for school officials begins to break down at the administrative level, with fewer people supporting or trusting the principals and an overwhelming majority disapproving or not supporting of the school board. The fight against censorship and the access of reading for children is an important one, and I try to highlight one negative and one positive story in this field whenever these come about. However, unfortunately, there's going to be more negative than positive. Now, let's take a look at some recent releases. Recent release number 1, The Secret Dead Club by Kathryn Strong. A black tween with supernatural gifts determines to banish a terrifying specter from her town in this hair-raising American South set horror novel by Strong. After fleeing a wicked ghost in Las Vegas, Wednesday Thomas and her artist mother travel to Alton, Georgia, where Wednesday was born. Now the 7th grader is enrolled in Noble Middle School and living in her Nana's family home, which doesn't look haunted. Wednesday tries hard not to stand out, but her attempts are dashed when she makes a spectacle at lunch after discovering that she can see ghosts and that her school is haunted. While navigating her newfound powers, Wednesday learns that she is protected by Laudister, a guiding light that prevents Wednesday and her family from being possessed by spirits. As Halloween creeps closer, she's approached by classmates, each of whom has their own secrets, who invite Wednesday to be part of their covert paranormal mystery-solving group, the Dead Club. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. The next release I'd like to highlight is Glass, A Cinderella Tale by Kathryn Lasky. Though her family is renowned throughout England for its glassmaking artistry, Bess Wickham craves reality and nature over crystalline perfection. In part due to her affinity for gardening and ability to speak with birds. When she discovers the dark secret behind her family's glass creations, she leaves home to dwell with her animal friends in the woods, where she slowly develops her magical talents. Meanwhile, newly orphaned Estrella, whose recently deceased grandfather worked at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, is sent to live with her distant cousins, the Wickhams, who swiftly corral her into indentured servitude. Their fates drawn together by the Wickhams' cruelty and dark magic, Bess and Estrella's paths soon cross, with Bess acting as Estrella's magical benefactor. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. And finally, I'm including this because it has my favorite sandwich in the title. A Bánh Mi for Two by Trinity Nguyen. Vietnamese teen Phan Ngoc Lan secretly authors popular food blog A Bánh Mi for Two. But when a bad case of writer's block puts her blog on hiatus, she spends time working at her family's bánh mi stall in Saigon. In the U.S., meanwhile, Vietnamese-American college student Vivi Nguyen feels disconnected from her heritage. She is curious about her mother's childhood in Vietnam, but her mother refuses to talk about her experiences. Inspired by Lan's blog, Vivi travels to Vietnam as part of a study program abroad, unbeknownst to her parents. After a chance encounter brings Vivi and Lan together, Vivi encourages Lan to submit a piece about Saigon to a prestigious writing competition. As thanks, Lan helps Vivi track down people who can tell her more about her mom. Driven by a shared passion for Saigon, the two embark on numerous adventures, falling for each other in the process. This book is recommended for ages 14 and up. Coming up next, I have an interview with independent author Sophia Brown as she discusses her journey becoming a children's book author. You can find picture books like I'm Going to Be a Grandma on Amazon.com. Before the interview starts, I do want to say if you appreciate the work done here at the Book Fair podcast, you can support in a number of ways. The easiest and freest of which is, of course, sharing the podcast with a friend, a family member, or even a young reader in your life. I strive to keep these podcast episodes family-friendly so that you can share them with young readers who are interested in hearing these interviews. Secondly, you can rate and review the podcast on your podcatcher of choice, which may be Spotify, where you can leave a star rating, or iTunes, where you can write a review. Doing so helps grow the podcast. You can also follow the Book Fair Pod on Threads, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look for Book Fair Pod, spelled F-A-I-R-E. There's also a Patreon linked down in the podcast description. Now, let's move on to an interview with author Sophia Brown. Hello, Sophia. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Anthony. How are you?
I'm doing great as well. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
To get things started, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, a little bit about myself. I am a mother of 3 grown adult children. I became a grandmother a little over 3 years ago, going on 4 years actually. I got inspired to write children's books because my first grandchild, which was my grandson, after he was born, I would just read to him every single night. I never missed a night. And I just saw how that just brought us closer together, just the bond that we formed. It was just a beautiful experience. It was something that I felt we both looked forward to every night. And it was just a beautiful experience. And I got inspired because I wanted to give that same experience. I wanted to share that with other parents and grandparents so they could experience that with their children around story time as well, because reading, I feel, is crucial, is very important, and it helps self-development for our children. So yes.
Lovely. And reading to children is, as you say, very important for development. What were some of the stories that you read to your grandson from the earliest point? Like, what were some of the mainstays of story time?
Well, some of the books that I read to him, it was the Cat in the Hat, Winnie the Pooh, Peter Pan books. If you give a mouse a cookie, he loves that book. He loves that book, actually. I would read that to him a lot. Green Eggs and Ham, just all of those type of books. Peter Pan, Mickey Mouse books, Mickey Mouse Playhouse, a lot of different books. So yes, we had a variety.
So a variety of all the classics then. And yes. How long into this storytelling experience did you decide to start writing?
I want to say the idea started brewing within me maybe when he was about 4 to 5 months old. And I just let it sit there. I didn't act on it, and then I want to say closer to when he turned 1 year old, I decided, you know what, I want to make this a reality. And I just started going to work and just doing my research, finding out, how to get started. And then, the rest is history. My first book I wrote was I'm Going to Be a Grandma. That book was it was inspired by my experience, of course, with getting the news of learning that I was going to be a grandmother, how exciting it was, how it was I just enjoyed every moment. I immediately started planning for the baby, buying clothes and toys, helping our daughter decorate the baby's room. And it was just an exciting time.
And how do you feel that this relationship, specifically of being a grandmother, led to this desire to want to write, as opposed to, obviously you were a mother before you were a grandmother? How do you feel that the relationship of being a grandmother established that want to be a writer?
Having children is definitely a beautiful experience, no doubt about it. But I've heard several people tell me before I became a grandmother, how there's nothing like it. It's nothing like being a grandparent. How when you get to that level, it's just a totally different experience. And they were so right about that. And I want to say just the experiences, everything was so fresh and new, on both sides. Me being a new grandmother, my grandbabies new to this world, everything is just fresh and new. We're creating memories together. So that really helped me get inspired to want to write, and also write about those experiences that we were creating together.
Right. So you raised children, and you were a younger person back then, and you've lived a whole life since then. And as you're welcoming the grandchildren in, you feel like you're a completely different person, and that kind of creates that different lens as you're looking at the relationship, right?
Absolutely. Yes, totally different.
Yes, I've had grandparents in my life, and I have nieces and nephews, and I can see the way that they interact with my parents as opposed to how my parents interacted with me, and I can see how that is a very different situation.
Yes, and I'm sure you've heard like jokes. For example, you can take a child, right, an adult child. They would say to their mother, "Oh my goodness, like I cannot believe that you are allowing your grandchild to do this. Like if it was me, you would never let me, let's say, stay up late past 8 o'clock or 8:30, or eat a cookie after a certain time, and you're doing it with your grandchild. So it's like that, you know?
Yes, almost. Some would say spoiling the grandchild, but
Yes.
when I was having an interaction with my brother around a very similar situation with his son, I looked at him and I said, "How many times did Papa say no?" And we had lost our grandfather very recently to that, and that made him take a second to think about that, as there is a difference in the relationship between a parent and a child and a grandparent and a grandchild.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to the books that you're writing, are there any particular messages that you're hoping for parents and their children, or even grandparents and their grandchildren, to take away from it? Any messages, any themes, or any morals?
I would say definitely instilling the importance of reading to your children, just dedicating some time to be able to read to them whenever you can. If you can't, do it every day, definitely try to read to them as much as you can, just to instill those values in them. And also with that, it's like you're doing storytelling. When you read from a book, you're doing it in your way. You just make it fun and exciting, for the children when you're reading to them, and it's just have fun with it, and it just creates beautiful experience, memories that will last a lifetime. And that's what I want. That's what I hope that all of my books will be able to do.
Yes, when a child is read to, it instills that idea of imagination, creativity, and a love of reading. And when a parent reads to a child, it's also helping them to learn to be creative. As you said, doing it in their own way, presenting voices, or maybe setting a tone, and learning how to be a storyteller. Do you think that is a message of creativity and continuing to learn to be creative that an adult can get out of these kinds of stories?
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Yes. Because it just like you can make up your own character, like how you want to present the story that you're reading, how you want it to come across when you're reading it to your child or to your children. So it's like you're in your own world, so to speak,
And when it comes to, and this is something we see a lot with these children's books, is sometimes there's barriers to access with children's books. Sometimes the local libraries or even local bookstores don't carry enough books, and in not ideal situations, parents don't always put a priority on reading to children or buying these books for children. Do you have anything that you'd like to say to any parents who aren't maybe prioritizing the development of their children by reading to them or instilling a love of reading?
Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. It is hard to, and I understand, time is a big factor. People are so busy nowadays. You have your job, you have to work to, to provide for your children, right? Keep a roof over their head, food and clothes and all of that stuff. So time becomes a factor in most cases. And this is something that I also took into consideration in writing my children's books. I'm trying to be mindful not to make the book so long. I wanted each of them to be just a certain amount of time for the parents to be able to read the books to their children and, get them to sleep at night. So it won't be too time consuming for them. So that's something I definitely took into consideration. So absolutely, like, Amazon, it's so many different places, Walmart, so many different places you can go to now to access basically like these short children's books, illustrations that you could read to your children every night. And they're basically short reads. It won't take you too long to read them.
And so when it comes to providing for children, we see a lot of single parents. We see parents who are struggling to provide by working multiple jobs. And so time may be limited. So you feel that you're kind of sitting in this very important market of providing stories and making sure that it's not a barrier in that there's a large time commitment.
Absolutely. Yes. Because I think that's very important, because I know there's parents out there that would and do love to read to their children at night. And maybe they have books. I've been there, myself. The books are so thick, and it's very time consuming. If you've been working all day, you had to cook and clean and get the kids ready for the next day for school. So it's a lot of stuff. You want to read to your children, but maybe you have to cut the book in half, and so all of that stuff is, you have to consider all of that too. The amount of time it would take for you to read a book to your child.
And along that same line of barriers to reading to children, there is, as you mentioned, resources like Amazon, as well as public libraries offer ebooks through apps like Libby or Overdrive. And so there are methods for people to be able to read to their children in non-traditional ways, instead of having the physical book in hand, doing so on a phone or a tablet.
That is so true. You are absolutely right. The ebooks, especially, you take grandparents, for example. Maybe their grandchildren or their grandchild is out of state, and they want to develop that, those memories with their grandchildren, to be able to read to them. I mean, in a case like that, the ebooks would be perfect, for them to maybe get on a Zoom call or Google Meets and just read the book to them that way. So definitely, with technology, the sky's the limit.
I love that, absolutely, because a lot of times people will see raising a child as a very old school thing, and there seems to be a correct way to do so, and that you want to do things the way that you were brought up. But there are plenty of resources and new technology that make these kinds of things a lot easier. Are you living in the same area as all of your grandchildren? Do you use some of these resources like over the phone or Zoom for reading?
Actually, I am blessed that I do have all of my grandchildren in the same state. Now, there was a time, I want to say this is when COVID had happened, when families had to we had to distance ourselves. It was very tough. It was very hard. So I utilized Google Hangout, and I would read the ebooks to my grandson that way. So, I mean, I never missed a day of reading to him. So absolutely.
And how old are your grandchildren today?
Well, my oldest, he is almost 4. And then my granddaughter, she's the princess of the family. She is 2. And then I have another grandson who is 1. He's actually turning 2. And then my youngest grandson is 6 months.
And so I guess this applies maybe to probably just the oldest, because I saw that you used your grandchildren's nicknames in the book. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
And how does your grandson feel about seeing himself represented in the work?
Actually, him and my granddaughter, especially him, like you said, because of his age, when he first saw the book, I'm going to be a grandma, he pointed at the bear, and the little baby said, "Oh, that's me." And it just made my heart just melted.
Yes, and with children at that age, anytime that they see something in a book that they kind of latch on to, be it directly like that or indirectly as just seeing a child in a picture book, they'll say it's them, and they'll have this connection to the book. And so when reading to children, it's very important to have these kinds of stories that reflect them in a way like that.
Absolutely. Agreed.
And as your grandchildren grow older, do you see the content of the books evolving with them?
That's a good question. And I'm going to say yes. I do want my books to grow with them. So, when they get a certain age, then I'll be going into the chapter books, so things of that nature. So absolutely, I want the books to grow with them, for sure.
Have you put any thought into what those chapter books might look like? Would you continue to use the grandchildren as inspirations for the characters?
I would like to think so. I really haven't really planned it all out, but I definitely want to keep the core, like I would like to keep them incorporated in all of the books that I write some kind of way. So
yes, and it isn't just chapter books. There are also early reader books. There are short story collections. When it comes to children's literature, it covers such a broad scope of an audience because what we consider to be children is anything under the age of 18. So from birth to 17. So we're looking at picture books, board books, short story collection, short stories or nursery rhymes, chapter books, all the way up to young adult fiction. So things like Dr. Seuss and things like the Maximum Ride series by James Patterson will technically fit in that broad umbrella of children's literature. Have you found that working under this broad umbrella has maybe changed the way that you go about telling stories in your daily life?
Just the fact how a lot of us, we take things like very serious and don't realize, we have to make every moment count. Every day is special. Every day is important. So I would say with writing my books, I realized that the importance of just living in the moment, just embracing the moment is very important. And not to really, of course we want to plan. That's important. We have to plan from day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, etc. But we have to live in that moment at that point in time. I think that's very important, and not lose sight of that, because tomorrow is not promised to anyone. So we have to cherish the time that we're in right now.
That's very interesting because as I was saying, kind of the work reflecting in your philosophy, I've noticed that as I delve more into children's literature, I find myself looking more to the future because I don't have children, but I also have started to worry about what future generations will grow up with, because it gives me perspective thinking about how there are people that are going to be growing up in the world behind me, even though I'm looking at the world as an adult living in it. So it's sort of in that same vein. Do you hope to someday see these books, not just your books, but these books that have stayed the test of time, like Cat in the Hat, being read by your children and then by your grandchildren to their children and grandchildren?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. That is something I can definitely envision happening. Absolutely. Because you take Dr. Seuss books. Those books have been around. They've been around for years. Those books were actually read to me when I was a child, So now I read those to my children, and now I'm reading them to my grandchildren. So, yes.
And one of the things that reading to children definitely strengthens is it does build stronger connections. Is that something that you see happening through you reading to your children and now reading to grandchildren? Do you see that happening where the bond between family members strengthens?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's just a beautiful experience, because memories are created, based off of that. It's all in what you make it, when you have that time with your children and you're sitting down reading with them. It's just the sky is the limit. Like, it's all up to your imagination, how you want to deliver the book, how you want to read the book. What do you want to transpire while you're reading to them? How you can make it fun as fun as you like it. It's all up to you. Like, for example, after I would read the books to my grandchild, I would sing a song to him right afterwards. And then, as he got a little older, I would, just tickle him before he went to bed and, just make it fun and interesting, So it's all wrapped into story time,
And so, when it came to writing this series of books, you went a more modern, non-traditional route of self-publishing, correct?
Yes.
And so, with the access to technology and how everything has expanded in the last 20 years or so, making these things much easier, do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
I would definitely say do your research is definitely important. Get a team behind you. You know, you're going to need an illustrator, someone to review your writing. Have those people in place. And most importantly, again, I can't say it enough, do your research. It's definitely important to research.
And on the topic of research, what kind of research did you do in preparation to writing I'm Going to Be a Grandma?
Well, first, I did research on how to write a book, a children's book. So I did a lot of research on that, looked at a lot of YouTube videos as well, spoke to different writers, got their feedback as well, spoke with a lot of different illustrators and went through their portfolios. So, I mean, it was a long process.
And so what was also the process of finding an illustrator like?
Oh, that process was, it was kind of painful because at the time when I found the illustrators, it's a team of illustrators that I actually work with, and I had to pick one of the illustrators that I actually wanted to work with for the books. And when I decided to go with this person, it was hard for me to let go in terms of, you know, I had my ideas on what I wanted the characters to look like, you know, how I wanted the images to appear on the book. But I mean, I had to let the expert, you know, do his job, you know. And, you know, of course I had my input on things, you know, just you can tweak this, do this and do that or whatever. But overall, I had to let go and just trust him and allow him to create and bring my book to life, which he did an awesome job.
And so when publishing a book, usually in traditional publishing, there's the writer, there's co-writers, collaborators, researchers, proofreaders, editors, marketing, publicists, agents. What was your team like as somebody who went the independent publishing route?
Well, pretty much those people that you just named, the proofreaders, the editors, I had to search and find those individuals to work with on my own. And that's what I mean by creating your team. And that's building your team, getting those core people around you, because that's going to help you with your success, you know? So that's something that I actually had to do along the way.
And are there any plans for future books in this series? Are you going to keep expanding the current line of picture books?
Yes, actually, I have my 5th book that's going to be released in September. It's called Our Special Vacation with Grandma and Grandpa. So after that book, I have 5 more books that's in this series, that's in this collection, that will be released. Hopefully all before this year is out. And then from there, I'm going to start a new collection, and I'm actually going to add my 4th grandchild to the collection.
And to close out the interview, Sophia, how do you describe yourself and the work that you do as a writer?
That's a great question. It's very important. Very important question. I feel as a writer, I see myself as a passionate storyteller who just loves to capture the joys and just the magic for those special moments for families. My inspiration comes from my own experiences, as you know, as a grandmother, which is reflected in my books that I write. So I'm aimed to create those heartwarming stories that will bring families closer together. That is my goal. I inspire to do this for families and just create cherished memories. You know, my work is definitely all about the love, connection, and the timeless magic of storytelling. So,
all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This has been an interview with author Sophia Brown. I'll include links to her Amazon page where you can purchase her books, as well as resources used throughout the episode. I hope you enjoy this expanded format where I include headlines, new releases, as well as author interviews all together to create one big episode. This has been The Book Fair, children's literature for grown-ups, and as always, I'll talk at you next time.